Throughout the world of music and entertainment, few figures have courted as much attention and controversy as Sean Combs, also known as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or simply Diddy. Rising from humble beginnings in Harlem to become a mogul in the realms of hip-hop, fashion, and business, his influence is undeniable. But with fame often comes scrutiny, and over the years, a growing chorus of critics and commentators have raised serious questions about his character and conduct. To understand why some label Puff Daddy as a creep, it's important to look beyond the glitzy surface and delve into the stories, allegations, and patterns that have shadowed his career. Puff Daddy's ascent in the 1980s was meteoric. He was a tastemaker, a visionary producer, and a charismatic performer. But behind the scenes, tales of ruthless ambition and cutthroat business dealings began to circulate. Former collaborators, employees, and even friends have described an environment where loyalty was often rewarded, but betrayal, or even perceived disrespect, could mean exile from his circle. The music industry is notorious for its tough operators, but some say Puff Daddy took it to an extreme, wielding power in ways that were less about leadership and more about control. One aspect that fuels the creep narrative is the way Puff Daddy has allegedly manipulated relationships for personal gain. Over the years, several artists signed to his label, Bad Boy Records, have spoken out about unfair contracts and financial exploitation. Promising young talents, eager for a shot at stardom, sometimes found themselves locked into deals that left them with little creative control or financial reward. While such practices are unfortunately common in the industry, the consistency and scale of these claims against Puff Daddy have raised eyebrows. For many, this pattern of taking advantage of the vulnerable smacks of predatory behavior. Beyond the business realm, there are stories about Puff Daddy's personal conduct that are even more troubling. Over the years, he's been the subject of numerous lawsuits and allegations involving violence, intimidation, and harassment. While not all of these accusations have led to convictions or formal charges, the sheer number and consistency paint a disturbing picture. Accounts from former associates describe a culture of fear, where Diddy's temper could flare unpredictably, and retribution for perceived slights could be swift and severe. One notorious example is the 1999 nightclub shooting incident in New York City, in which Puff Daddy was charged with weapons violations. Though he was ultimately acquitted, the trial exposed a lifestyle of excess, fueled by ego and surrounded by danger. Witnesses described scenes of chaos, with Diddy at the center, allegedly quick to anger and surrounded by enablers. While the courts found insufficient evidence for a conviction, the public was left with the impression of a man who thrived amid turmoil, chaos, and intimidation. More recently, a series of lawsuits and allegations have cast an even darker shadow. Various individuals have come forward with stories of abuse, ranging from psychological manipulation to physical violence and sexual misconduct. In some cases, the accusations are harrowing, involving detailed accounts of coercion and exploitation. While it's important to remember that allegations are not proof of guilt, the volume and consistency of these reports have led many to question not just Puff Daddy's business ethics, but his basic decency. The way Puff Daddy has responded to criticism also contributes to his negative reputation. Rather than addressing concerns directly, he often resorts to deflection, legal threats, or public relations maneuvers. Critics argue that this lack of accountability suggests a man more interested in protecting his image than in making amends for any harm he may have caused. In the age of social media, where transparency is increasingly valued, such tactics appear outdated and evasive. Beyond individual incidents, there is a recurring theme of exploitation and control in the way Puff Daddy interacts with those around him. From carefully curating his inner circle to allegedly using his influence to silence detractors, he has been accused of fostering an environment where people feel obligated to do his bidding or face professional ruin. For some, this is the very definition of creepy, using power not to inspire or uplift, but to manipulate and dominate. It's also worth noting the impact this has had on those who once considered Puff Daddy a mentor. Several former protégés have described feeling discarded or betrayed after falling out of favor. The sense that relationships are transactional, valued only as long as they serve Diddy's interests, has left a trail of disillusionment and resentment. For many, the emotional toll of being used and then cast aside is significant, and it adds to the impression of a figure whose charm and charisma mask a calculating and self-serving nature. The creep label is, of course, subjective. Some defend Puff Daddy, pointing to his philanthropic work, his role in launching careers, and his undeniable impact on popular culture. They argue that in a cutthroat industry, toughness is a necessity, and that many of the stories about him are exaggerated or motivated by jealousy. There is some truth to this. No one rises to the top without making enemies, and powerful men are often targets for rumor and innuendo. But when considering the weight of multiple allegations, the patterns of behavior, and the testimonies of those who have worked closely with him, it becomes harder to dismiss the concerns as mere gossip. For many, the issue isn't just about isolated incidents, but about a sustained pattern of conduct that suggests a disregard for boundaries, consent, and the well-being of others. Ultimately, the question of why some consider Puff Daddy a creep comes down to trust. In a world where authenticity and respect are increasingly valued, a legacy marked by exploitation, intimidation, and unresolved accusations can't be easily overlooked. Whether or not all the stories are true, the perception of Puff Daddy as a manipulator and abuser of power is deeply entrenched. For his critics, the evidence is clear. Behind the facade of success and glamour lies a man whose actions have caused real harm and whose refusal to take responsibility only deepens the sense of unease. As the conversation around power, consent, and accountability continues to evolve, figures like Puff Daddy serve as reminders of the complexities and dangers of unchecked influence. Whether or not he ever faces justice in a legal sense, his reputation in the court of public opinion remains forever marked by the stories of those who say they were used, abused, or betrayed. And for many, that alone is reason enough to see him not as a role model, but as a cautionary tale.